My name is Alan Atkinson, and I'm a friend of the family. I've known Nancy for almost as long as I've known Ann and Ed, which dates back to about 2001. So for me, that has been a long time. And then just to sit here today at services and look at, first of all, just the number of people that came out, the number of people who wanted to be here. And I could tell for some of us who've gotten a little bit older, some of us who tried really hard to get here, that it took some effort to get here, that there's a lot of people in Nancy's life. And to me, I feel like I was just in such a small part of it. And maybe it was just because we'd come over the hill and come visit, or it was a trip of convenience, coming to visit when we're on the way to the airport, on the way back, or going somewhere. But then there were times at the beach when it was much more purposeful, and it was Thanksgiving. And there were times even when I had, along with Rich and Claire Bradley, and with Ellen and Ray Kopic, and Tom and Gail Jankowski, and other people who were in the audience here today, we had a house across the street from the Jungermans because the Jungermans did it. John and Nancy had gotten a house with Nancy's childhood friend, Rachel Belovich, and I'm sure I'm butchering her name, but just the fact that they could do this and that they could pull this off gave me the hope and the gumption we could pull off something similarly co-opt-like across the street. And for several years we did. And that was then being there at the beach when the younger ones would come across the street, and especially on Thanksgiving, which was just seemed to be a huge tradition of theirs. Never was of mine, but I got invited into the home and would get to sit with John and Nancy and the kids and come to appreciate what an incredible family it was that Ann came from. And so in reflecting on that, I came to know a bit more about Nancy Jungerman, Nancy Kidwell, the Kidwell family stories, and a much deeper appreciation of Nancy's world and Nancy's stretch and her breadth and her reach of those around her that she loved and those who loved her, and how important that was for her. So sitting here today and seeing all these people, many of whom were powerful, integral parts of her life, but have also started out as just minuscule parts of her life and gone on to become powerful and influential people in their own right. I have become so much more in these latter years appreciative of Nancy's love for her daughter, for her sons, for her husband John, for her grandkids, and to see Grady, Owen, particularly Owen's talk here today, certainly blew away a section of us back in the back of being the community from Napa who knew Ann and Ed and knew about this family, and watched these kids grow up. They're a spitting image of their grandma. And that's to Nancy's credit. So, Nancy, I know you're still out there watching because you just want to know how it's going to go. I say kudos to you. You pulled it off.
So this little story is for the family. So John had said yes to me many times when I was asking him to be helping me with something at the church. And one of the jobs I got asked to do at the church was to be chair of the capital campaign, which I thought was going to be a short little job, which started out its major push right at the beginning of the major recession. So it ended up being an extremely drawn out, complicated process. But one of the committees of that task was a group called the Early Gifts Group, which involved recruiting the elders of the church to communicate their interest in the project and hopefully convince their friends, who are also the older people in our church, to get on board in a big way. And on that committee were a number of the big starting people of the church, including John, Nancy, Eldridge Moores, Ray Kopic, and maybe one other. But I had never really worked with Nancy that much, so I didn't know Nancy really well. And at one of the early meetings, we were discussing, our different roles, what we were going to do. And I was saying something about John, who I knew quite a while by that point. And I said, I was in awe of his intellect and his accomplishments and the things he had done. And I said that it always impressed me how modest John was. And Nancy immediately jumped in and said, oh no, he's not modest at all. He sometimes answers the door in the nude. And the British word for that to me was gobsmacked. And I just thought, maybe it wasn't a good idea having a husband and wife on the same committee. But it worked out well, and both are lovely people. We're lovely people in the church. Their children are obviously lovely, as well as their grandchildren are very interesting human beings and extremely articulate today. So it's just been a pleasure knowing the family.
Hi there.
Hi.
We want to talk about MWG, so named by Nancy. One time, well, you start.
MWG means My Women's Group. And as I recall, this is a very long-standing group. I was part of when I was minister here. But then I went elsewhere and couldn't really be part of the group in an ongoing way. But Nancy once put in her calendar MWG, and then she forgot what that was. And she was just making a note to herself that My Women's Group meets on this day at this time. But somehow, when she figured out what that was and went to the group, the name stuck. And the group was comprised mostly of older women, including her good friend Peggy and Sue Somm and
Ellen Kopic, Jane Lauder.
Right, and Ann Allard. And it was a group of really powerful women.
And we were the babies.
We were the young ones.
We who are now retired, we were the babies and had these women, our mother's generation, having lunch with us every Tuesday,
Right.
brown bag lunch.
And Susan and I were just talking about how important it was for us as younger women at the time, and that would also include Donna. What's her last name now?
Donna Sachs.
Donna, oh, it's back to Sachs, okay. So us younger women had these immensely powerful and creative and interesting and pioneering women as role models for us.
And as friends.
And as friends.
And supporters.
Right.
So I first joined the group when I was about to get into law school. I didn't know if I was going to get in and all that stuff. So I got into law school. My children were 4 and 7. Going to law school with a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old is not recommended. But these women, Nancy included, I would say, I can't do this, it's just too hard. Nancy said, you can do this. Okay, yes, ma'am. And of course, I did.
Right, and she was very enabling. She was on the search committee when I was candidating for this congregation, and she said at the time that she wanted to bring into the church the feminine principle, because there had only been 2 male ministers before me, and I'm not sure even what she meant by that or whether I believe in the feminine principle, but somehow her enabling of me to think of myself as breaking some new ground here was part of what made me decide to come here. And she was supportive all the way through. She was a minister to the minister.
And
in
you were, what,
best
30
sense.
years old?
Yeah, 29. 29. So she, when I think about the remarkable people in my life, and there have been many, she rises to the top as one of the most remarkable and influential people in my life.
Nicely said. Nicely said. She was a special friend. One of the things I loved doing with Nancy was teasing. She was Big Brother trained. I am Big Brother trained. And we decided that made us especially tough. And it made us especially good at kind of exchanging loving but funny barbs with each other. And so we teased each other a lot, but in the very best of humor. She was a special friend, and it was wonderful to have her for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. I go back to the mid-'60s. I came to school at UC Davis in 1963, just after my parents had been killed in an automobile accident just before I graduated from high school that spring. And then that fall, 1963, I came to school here. And got through the first 2 years pretty well, but then things really hit me in my junior year. And I had what I call my crazy year. I kind of fell apart, and I ended up, thank God for the counseling center, I ended up at the counseling center, and Nancy was my counselor. And I think she saved my life. It was a real rough year. She got me through it. I saw her a lot. She was exactly the support that I needed to get through that year and be able to continue on. So then many, many years later, I came to church here after another personal crisis and found Nancy here, and we had reestablished a friendship this time. And we were able to just talk about what had gone on that year with me, and she shared some of her experiences when she'd been in school. And we just really clicked on a whole nother level at that point. So I'm just so indebted to her. Like I say, I think she saved my life, my crazy year at school, and then reconnecting after all those years as friends here. She means the world to me.
Do I just start? I'm Susan Brady, and I was a babysitter for the Jungermans. That's where my life with them started and lasted from then until now. But I have a babysitting story to tell about Annie when she was 4. And she asked her mother, she said, "Mom, can I have a cookie?" And her mom said, "Feel free." And she says, "Mommy, I'm 4. So I'd like to put that in as a little memory for the kids.
Hi, I'm Robin Daddle. My mother, Dory Daddle, was part of the original Glacier Circle community, and she always felt through much of her life that she was a bit of an outsider. And in some regard, she was at Glacier Circle because she had not known the folks there for 40 or 50 years of friendship. She did not move to Davis until the 1990s. So she knew her fellow Unitarians for about 10 years before Glacier Circle. But Nancy, probably because of her special training as a psychologist and just being a very sensitive, loving person, picked up on that with my mom and made her, made friendship with her a bit of a project, I think. Kind of took my mom under her wing. My mom had grown up in the Bay Area like Nancy had. They were both born in December 1925. My mom, in fact, was born on December 7th and turned 16 on Pearl Harbor Day. So they had that Bay Area history that they shared in common. And Nancy, at one point, rearranged the seats at the dinner table at Glacier Circle, so my mom sat next to her. And she was just very, very loving and caring, and I'm really appreciative of that. But I also, given what was said in the service today, wanted to add to the wealth of poetry that was read and referred to. And this is in the context of Nancy's appreciation for both the spirit and science. And she could hardly avoid the latter, being married to John. So this is an Emily Dickinson poem, a very well-known one, and this is the poem. Faith is a fine invention for gentlemen who see, but microscopes are prudent in an emergency.